We've got updated offensive coordinator chatter. We've also got recap of a massive win this weekend against Coastal Carolina, just a couple days late, and we get into the Clemson preview. Locked On Gamecocks has a massive week ahead, and we start right now.
You are Locked On Gamecocks, your daily podcast on the South Carolina Gamecocks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, guys? Welcome into Locked On Gamecocks. I'm your host, Chris Marler, host of the Locked On Gamecocks show, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, now the #1 sports podcast network in America. Round of applause. I am filming under this interrogation lamp at my fiance's family's house because we're down in Tampa for Thanksgiving, but it doesn't mean the shows are going to stop. So we've got a full week ahead and a lot to get to. Before we do, I want to give a quick shout out to our friends at Game Time. Make sure you guys download the Game Time app. It's the best place to get tickets anywhere on the market. And right now, new users, when you sign up and use the promo code LOCKEDONCollege, can get $20 off your first purchase. Head to Game Time app right now. All right, let's get into the show. Where do we want to begin? We can talk about the Coastal Carolina game. Kind of want to put that off for a second because I want to talk more about part of the game, but also give an update on some of the offensive coordinator stuff. There was some chatter this weekend about what's next in offensive coordinator. Mike Furrey, 2 games in, you scored an average of 40 points in each of those games, and you put up 500 yards of offense this past weekend and 385 against a very good Texas A&M team the week before. I know what happened in the second half of that A&M game. I will say this. I still think that if the best option is outside of the current room and the current coaching room, then you go outside of that room. I think that Shane Beamer has to make sure that whoever this hire is not just somebody that's going to be able to put up yards, but this is somebody that's going to potentially have to save his job. This is the biggest hire of his entire career. You could make the case maybe, I don't know, maybe it's Clayton White and how good of a job he's done on defense, but that's been something we haven't had to worry about for the last 5 years. You have to worry about the offense, and he has not made good coordinator hires. I think before the last 2 games, a lot of people looked at this and said, listen, you've got to go find somebody outside the building. I was in that camp as well. If you tell me that Mike Furrey is the best option at OC and be your new play caller, and you believe that, I will buy in. I think you have to make sure you're doing your due diligence. But from everything that we've heard about what Beamer is planning on doing with making this hire, this is not something he's done in the past where it's like, well, who's the one closest to my office? Who can I peek outside and say, hey, you know what, you'll do, like with Mike Shula. It's not somebody he's promoting within necessarily out of just ease and convenience. If he hires Mike Furrey from within and promotes him as the OC, then he will be doing that because he thinks he is the best option. He has given every indication that he will go into this entire process to take it seriously and say that, listen, we understand how bad the past 9 games were with under Mike Shula and how disappointing this season was with a generational type quarterback, and it's unacceptable. His job's on the line, and I think he knows that. So after this week, after the Clemson game, you have to do some self-assessment and figure out what it was with your decision-making that went into making those previous decisions with the previous hires and see if those are the right things to either learn from, reverse, and go the opposite direction, or take in other people's point of view. Even though you're going to be ultimately held accountable for this, make sure you're taking in more advice from people in the room that aren't your own voice. Because, again, he has been not great figuring out who should be in charge of calling the plays since he's been at South Carolina. He's done a lot of other things great, but this is not one of them. I don't know if Furrey is the guy. Like I said, I don't know if he is the guy. I don't know when we're even going to know this. I do know that when you talk about the decision he's going to have to come to, I think Furrey's name will be on the table. And I think that also what he's done is at least make this very difficult to say no, because one thing Mike Furrey has done a tremendous job of is acquire talent. And in this day and age of college football, that's one of the most important things you have to do. Still be a good recruiter, still be really, really good at your job, coaching position, all that kind of stuff. I think he's had Nick Harbor make a lot of headway in comparison to where he's been in years past to now. And then going back to the recruiting thing, like this is a guy that was landing people all over the country and has been one of the best recruiters on this staff. Now, That's not the most important or the only important part of his job. But I do think what he's been able to do from an offensive standpoint and say, hey, think about how bad the run game has been all season. This receivers coach comes in and figures out how to make this thing a lot more QB friendly, and also figure out how to get with Sean Elliott, how to make the offensive line be a little bit more apt and efficient in how they're able to block. You've had more success in the run game, point blank period. I mean, like the game against A&M, you had more success. Coastal Carolina, you can scoff at that all you want. If you if you want to look at this and say, well, they had 570 yards of offense or whatever it was, that's fine. If you don't want to take that into serious consideration as to why he should be considered, I get that. I fully get that. But I also think that you have to look at where you were versus where you're now. There's no part of me that thinks that Mike Shula would have put up that many yards of offense or that many points. His offense wouldn't have done that. They didn't do it all year. Didn't do it against South Carolina State. That being said, the benchmark, and I think Shane Beaver knows this, the benchmark cannot be, well, it's better than Mike Shula, because Mike Shula was an objective disaster. So where does he go from here? It'll be very interesting to see how it plays out this upcoming weekend against Clemson, because as bad as Clemson has been, they are still one of the best and most talented defensive rosters in the country. I mean, you've got former 5-stars everywhere. You've got two of the best defensive line, interior defensive linemen in this year's upcoming NFL draft. Both of them will be first-round picks. Peter Woods, obviously, one of them, he's been fantastic. Anytime you see a down lineman with a single-digit number, usually pretty damn good. You think about Terrell at the cornerback position, he will be a first-round pick. They still have former 5-stars at linebacker, and just like they're a very talented roster. So what he's able to do against that defensive unit, I think will go a long way in determining how seriously his name is taken into consideration when making the hire. Even if he puts up 30 or 40 points, which I don't know if that would happen, but if he's able to do that and put up a ton of yards and the offense takes another step forward, you're still fighting a pretty massive uphill battle because the sample size you have with him is only 3 games. I think I'm at the point with it where I look at it and say, listen, if you put up, I'll be very impressed if he's able to put up a lot of numbers against this Clemson defense, even though it's a defense that's been, they've got this year multiple times. If he's able to do it and able to figure out run schemes and blocking schemes along with Sean Elliott that are able to put up 4 and 5 yards a carry against that interior defensive line, the place they've struggled in, that'll be something I'll look at a lot. And then again, how creative and also simple can you be when you need to be with the personnel you have? And what I mainly mean by that is you saw it against Coastal Carolina, first and goal or second goal from the 1. Anytime you're goal to go from the 1, and you have a 6'3", 240-pound quarterback, it's a unicorn in the backfield, probably a pretty smart move to hand the ball to him or just not hand the ball to anyone else. And as smart and simple as that sounds, it's something they have not done consistently all year. I was happy to see that. I was happy to see some of the option game and RPOs they put into place over that. And you think about also, this decision was made during the bye week, but it's also a situation where they have put in very limited portions of install into what he would want to do for his entire playbook or his entire offensive identity. So lots of not a big sample size. Still think no matter what, if he's the right hire, then sell me on it, Shane. That's fine. But at the same time, this needs to be done with a ton of due diligence and make at least the optics of this hire feel like it's not just we'll get that guy because we like him. Because of course we like him. He's a great recruiter and he's been great on staff. He needs to be retained no matter what. But that does not mean that he was good against Coastal Carolina. He is now your option A as the offensive coordinator. The most important hire Shane Beamer will make during his tenure at South Carolina is this hire, and his job depends on it. So that is all for the start of the show. We're going to get into more of the Coastal Carolina stuff because I know we didn't recap it this weekend. It was a very busy weekend. We were traveling, coming down here to Tampa. You might hear some people in the background because we got a full house over here. It's been a lot of fun. We're very excited for Thanksgiving week, as I hope you are as well. So I'm going to take a quick break, pay some bills. When we come back, we're going to talk about a disappointing weekend for basketball that they played in some Methodist gym in West Virginia. Apparently that was the worst arena I've ever seen. Also talk about the Clemson game coming up. What is the one thing South Carolina has to do more than anything else against Clemson? We'll talk about that when we come back. Before then, got to pay some quick bills here and give a shout out to our friends over at the Game Time app. Maybe you're going to Colonial Life. Maybe you're going to Colonial Life on Friday. Maybe you're going to Williams-Brice on Saturday. Either way, if you are in need of tickets, you need to head over to our friends at Game Time. Listen, tailgates, the rivalries, the energy in the stands, there's just nothing like college football, but let's be real. Actually getting tickets can feel more like a battle than the game itself sometimes, with the endless queues, hidden fees, prices jumping at checkout. That's why I use the Game Time app that gives the advantages back to fans. It's the easiest way to score last-minute tickets at the best prices. With no surprise fees, what you see is what you pay. I tell you what, they have the best customer service. They have the best deals anywhere. But again, the customer service and the fact that you can see not only the view from your seat before you ever walk in the stadium, but also all of the upfront prices. So there's no surprise at checkout. It's one of the many things I love about the Game Time app. Take the guesswork out of buying college football tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply, but again, that's promo code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. Download Game Time today. We'll be right back with more Locked On Gamecocks right after this. All right, I wanted to open the show with this, but I also thought we're 2 days removed because I wasn't able to get to the game right afterwards. We were traveling all day yesterday, but a massive win. And I understand that it's just Coastal Carolina, but I also feel like, if we're being honest, not a lot of us were feeling like 51-7 was ever on the table. What did South Carolina do well? Well, to answer that question, it's a lot is the answer. The biggest takeaways. I tell you what, in a season where I feel like we've been wrong about so much from what we thought would happen, one of the things that felt really positive for me, especially, like just to be perfectly frank, is that you went into this game, and Coastal Carolina was there's some things they did well. They run the football well. That was one of the things that we knew about them coming in. But the thing that I kept talking about that I wanted to see more than anything else in this game, Coastal Carolina had one of the worst first quarter and second quarter scoring defense in the country. They were ranked 106th or worse in both those categories. They were also 92nd or worse in each of those quarters for scoring offense, meaning basically, simply put, they got off to really slow starts and their opponents don't. They're one of the worst first half scoring teams on both sides of the ball in the country. I thought that was a pretty massive opportunity for South Carolina to go into a game where they just put up 30 points in the first half against A&M and none in the second half. And they kind of forgot the way they kind of forgot knowing how to win. And that's a pretty, that kind of loss is a pretty damaging moment to your psyche, especially as an athlete. Like what confidence do you take away from that game? And how do you buy back in to say, like, man, what else do we have to do? Like this, like what else could go wrong this season? What else do we have to do to get a win? Like, come on, you had the Bama loss, that was a heartbreaker. Then you had this with A&M. Even if it was Coastal Carolina, I thought that the biggest thing that could have happened, biggest opportunity for this team, was getting up early on somebody and staying up and pulling away late. And they came out of the gates. They scored on the very first play of the game, and it felt like the biggest weight in the world was lifted off your shoulders. Sellers house call the very first play of the game. Couldn't have asked for a better start. You then go into the first half. You scored 3 touchdowns in the first half. I think you get a fumble inside the 10. So now you're able to score. It wasn't a defensive touchdown, but you're able to flip the field immediately, punch that in. You're up 20-0 at the end of the first quarter, 37-0 at the first half. Could not have been a better start to this game. It made me incredibly happy that is where this game started, and then it's also where it ended. 51-7 the final, but you're up 37-0 at the half. It felt like they were having fun again. It felt like they were able to get a little bit of the monkey off their back, at least the bad taste out of their mouth after the loss to A&M. On the day, when you look at the numbers, they were over 50% on third down, combined with what do you call it? With third and fourth down, they were 7 of 12 on the day, put up 579 yards of offense, put up 315 yards to the air, which is crazy. LaNorris had a huge day. He put up 356 yards of offense and 4 touchdowns. Finally had the LaNorris Sellers moment of the day. That's basically, guys, like, I know who the opponent is, but that's like a third of his overall production that he had coming into that game for the season. And he knocked it out in one game, like 4 touchdowns in one game. Huge. It just felt good to have a win like that again, and to see a player that has struggled so much in this offense and this season to have that type of, I wouldn't say breakout game considering who it's against and at what point in the season we're in. But for him to go in there and have that kind of performance, it felt good to see it one more time in Williams-Brice. Maybe we see it again this weekend. I don't know. The other thing was this. You talk about this is a team that was top 25 in the country at running the football. And it was the one bright spot of this program or this team this year for Coastal Carolina. They came in 6-4. They're already bowl eligible. But they were really good at being able to run the football. In this game against this defense, you held them to 1.6 yards per carry, 29 carries for 46 yards. I mean, that's incredible. Like, and I feel like they got 6 or 7 on the first play of the game, their first offensive play of the game. So you won the turnover battle. Obviously, with the fumble, you had no turnovers on your end. You played a clean game. I mean, LaNorris completed 80% of his passes. The balance that you had on offense was also incredible to watch. 264 yards rushing at nearly 7 yards a pop, and then 315 yards through the air. I think the thing that stood out to me the most was this is a team that has struggled to run the football against air this year, right? Like, they have been very bad up front at running the football. And they gave up 0 sacks for one, talking about them being up front. And you had on offense, you were able to have 6.8 yards per carry. And like I said, 264 yards total rushing the football, 5 touchdowns. You also had, I mean, like, you were able to spread the wealth. LaNorris had 8 for 82, Fuller 8 for 63. I'll tell you what I loved almost more than anything. It set the tone for the whole game. And also I felt made me buy back in a little bit to where the psyche of this team might be. The first play of the game where you hit Jaden Sellers and he takes off and he's running, you look up, he's about 15 or 20 yard line trying to go in to score. And he's zigging and zagging all over the field trying to figure out like how to break back to open space. And you look up and you see Jordan Howell, number 22, running with him, trying to get downfield blocks. That made me happier than anything on the scoreboard. Like, that kind of buy-in, that kind of like teammate leadership, whatever you want to call it, I thought was huge. And it made me very happy to see in a season where it's like they, at any point they could have packed up and gone home. A lot of the fans feel like they could have too. And it was a great showing, I think, from both sides. So all in all, like I said, 51-7 was the final on the day. You scored in every single quarter. It's something you haven't done all season. You held a pretty good rushing team, like I said, like a very good rushing team to 1.6 yards a carry. You held them as a team to 220 yards of offense total, and that was on 65 plays. I mean, that's just like we've seen that from Clayton White before. This combination, and again, I know who the team is, but this combination of that defense and what they're capable of. They only had 1 sack. It wasn't like they were like in the backfield all day, like, disrupting, making a bunch of 3rd and longs. It was just they were a solid defense all afternoon, and suffocated this team. And then the offense finally looked like what we thought it could at some point at the start of the year. It's really late, but still, it is. I'm happy that it happened. So. All right, now, moving forward, Clemson is going to be a much tougher foe. When we come back, we're going to talk about the biggest thing that this team is going to need to do to win that game. They're a 2.5-point favorite. The line is out. It's a noon kick on Saturday, but you are at home, and even as a 4-7 team, they are a 2.5-point favorite over a preseason top 5 team. One of the weirdest, strange turn of events, I think. 2 top 15 teams coming into the season. And obviously neither season went the way I think either fan base, program, or whatever wanted to, but still a massive game this Saturday noon on SEC Network. So you talk about this game from a recruiting standpoint in state, especially with the bumper crop of talent that you have over the next 2 years. That could be huge. And you also have a chance to have one narrative that sticks with this team. You're going to have all the stuff about the hot seat in the offseason. You're going to have all the stuff about Shane Beamer not being able to have consistent and what's it called? Sustained success from year to year, because you keep having the dip, like one great year, bad year, great year, bad year. All of those narratives are going to be heavily talked about this offseason. You have a chance to make one of the other narratives that is going to be talked about along with that, is that you own this state and you've won 3 of the last 4. So we're going to talk about that when we come back right after this. All right. We're going to close out today's show. Before we do, I want to give a quick shout out to our friends at Wayfair. The holiday season is right around the corner. That means it's time to get your home ready. Whether you need more seating for guests, cozy new linens, or fun serveware for holiday hosting, Wayfair's Black Friday sale is here to help you make your space shine. The best part, you don't have to wait, okay? Black Friday is still 4 days away from us recording this, but they're happening. Those deals are happening all month long, with up to 70% off everything from sofas to spatulas and everything in between. I'll tell you what, if you ever hosted family for the holidays, you know how much of a difference a few nice little new touches can make. Wayfair makes that very, very easy. Don't miss out on Black Friday deals. Head to wayfair.com now to shop Wayfair's Black Friday sale for up to 70% off. That is WAYFAIR.com. Sale ends December 7th. All right. Let's get back into this real quick and close today's show. I want to start with the Clemson part of it. The most important thing you're going to have to do to win this game. And we're going to break down this game every single day this week. It's not till Saturday. Love the fact that you're at home. Love the fact that you're favored. And I do love the opportunity that's in front of this team. 5-7 is not how anybody dreamed this up. But beating your rival for the 3rd time in 4 years, especially coming off the heels of what Beamer walked into and the way that this game has played out in the years before he got there, and especially under Dabo, that's a massive, massive, massive opportunity for this team. You are riding momentum. They are too, a little bit coming into this game. They are bowl eligible. They're 6-5. But being able to win this game still means a ton, regardless of what the end of the season record would be for South Carolina and not going to a bowl. This is your bowl game, point blank, period. You can't keep them home for the holidays. They will be going to a bowl, but you can, again, land a massive, massive win at a time when you need it more than anything in this program, besides an OC. So what is the key to winning this game? First off, turnovers. And the biggest thing is that interior offensive line in this run game being able to find creative ways to reel off 4 to 6 yard gains. I don't need you to reel off a 60-yarder. It'd be awesome if you did. What I do need to see is what this team has really done over the past 6, the last 8 quarters of football, which is run the ball effectively, run the ball creatively, find ways to move the chains, but more importantly, stay ahead of the chains. They've still struggled with penalties. They had 7 in the last game against Coastal Carolina. But the way they were able to run the football, especially between the tackles and especially outside with Sellers on some RPO stuff and getting him on the edge, these are all things you struggle to do for the first 9 games of the year. These are also things that you might struggle with on Saturday against an interior defensive line with 2 top 15 NFL draft picks. Now, if you can figure out ways to negate or neutralize that tandem inside, you have a very, very good chance of winning this game. It is a turnover-prone offense, and it's also an offense, when you look at what Clemson's done all year, we know how disappointing South Carolina has been. Clemson has been right up there with them. They had a 13-point loss to Syracuse, who just got beat by 63. They lost to Duke, SMU, Syracuse, Georgia Tech, and LSU. Outside of maybe Tech, maybe SMU, none of those teams have really been a real hang your hat on type win. The bigger thing for me, and they've righted the ship a little bit. They held Louisville to 19 points, Florida State to 10, and obviously they had the big one against Furman. But the bigger thing is, against Duke, he gave up 45 points. 46. Against SMU, you gave up 35. Yes, you held Boston College and UNC in check at 10 points apiece, but those are terrible teams. A very bad Syracuse team, put up 34 against you. You gave up 24 to Tech. You gave up 17 to LSU, which doesn't sound like a lot, but it's also one of the worst offenses and scoring offenses in the country. And more so, you weren't able to score a lot in any of those games as well. The offense has been going a little bit better over the last few weeks. The 20 points against Louisville was surprising, but they still found a way to win. You've got to figure out a way to manufacture at least 24 points to win this game. 24 points, I think, is what the offense is going to have to score, or your team is going to have to score, because it can come in the special teams or on defense. But that would be enough, I think, to win this game. How do you run the football? How do you stay ahead of the chains? And how do you keep this team in a place that they have never been comfortable with before, but are starting to get more familiar with now? And that is with broken and shaken confidence. I don't want to say broken. Maybe broken's a little bit too harsh, but shaken confidence. You cannot let this team come in and set the tone and be the one that dictates how this game is played. They cannot let that happen. It doesn't mean you have to come out like you did against Coastal Carolina or against A&M and score a bunch of points at the start. It does mean that you have to be the one that dictates the action. You have to be the one that goes out here and is able to run the football effectively, get stops with them, and make sure they're the ones that are questioning themselves on what needs to change so they can move the ball, stop moving the ball, or stop South Carolina from moving the ball, and make those corrections, because they'd be down. Like that is what this game has to be. You do not have to be up by 14 at the half. It's not one of those things where it's like against Bama or A&M where it's like, well, if you come out hot and you're up by this many points, like hopefully you can hang on. It's not like that. Like, this is a team that has been shown time and time again this year. They are very beatable and against much worse teams. That's why you're favored. But you cannot let them spend the first 15, 30, 45 minutes of this game growing confidence while taking it away from you. So that is all for the first part of our Clemson week preview. We'll talk about basketball later. Basketball sucked this weekend. Like, the team, I'm not saying the team sucked. They had a heartbreaker yesterday against Northwestern. The game against Butler was a little bit more out of hand. They kind of pulled away and kept it between 8 to 12 points for most of the second half. Yesterday's game against Northwestern was much worse, because it was a last-second shot that Northwestern hits. They were ahead most of the game, but you were able to fight back and claw your way back in it. And then I just hope, for all of our sake, that arena or Methodist church that they played in is never, ever visited by this university again. That was the worst setup for a college basketball game and tournament I've ever seen. But lots to work on. Lost 2 games in a row. They come back this weekend on Friday to Colonial Life. Still a lot to work with, and I think a much better team and with much more ability, I think. I'm not saying they're going to make the tournament or be great in SEC play, but there's a lot more tools to work with in this year's team than there was last. So that is all for today's episode. We'll be back tomorrow, hopefully better lit, and over here from Tampa with Locked On Gamecocks from the road. But until then, go Cox.